July 4th, 2024. Live streaming from a distant galaxy. This is the world's most controversial podcast, the Doomsy McDoomscroller Show. Philosophical science fiction series featuring realistic futurology and refreshingly heretical commentary on the news. I'm your fictional host, Doomsy. And what's the title of this particular episode? I've got the script here in front of me, but oh wait, yeah, here it is. It's on the cover. Supreme Courts lay bare the tenets of your culture. Your culture. Not mine. Not anymore. I mean, I'm still an Earthling. But, I've been on the other side of the universe for so long. I'm no longer part of the dominant culture there on Earth. It took, unfortunately, leaving the planet to get away from civilized culture, because everywhere you go, there it is. Everywhere you go, pyramid building everywhere, warmongering everywhere, neo-pharaoh fostering everywhere. And that brings us to first headline or first news article. What we got here? Supreme Court's ruling in Trump immunity case makes a president king above the law. King above the law. Well, gosh, so much there, right? So much. So much just blasphemy. Just this, inspired by this headline here. Might as well get off the screen. We don't really need this article at the moment. The headline was enough. Right, so we're talking about laws, we're talking about kings, immunity, right, a president. And we're talking about you civilized folk. Yeah, it's American, USA and all, but you're just civilized. It's another civilized country. And as civilized folks, you always have kings. There's always royalty among you. You just have the royalty decided to say, let's sometimes let's play musical chairs with the kingship role. Right? You got temporary kings there in the USA. Temporary for 4 years, maybe 8 years. And you got laws. Okay, let's just mention this law. So, you got a royal class, of course, and noble class, peasants, middle class, whatever, and then peasants, commoners on the bottom. Right? And you get that no matter what you call your ism. No matter what ism you use in a civilized economy, that's what you get. You get the pyramid. You get the same socioeconomic hierarchy. Whether you call it communism or socialism or capitalism, Marxism, whatever kind of ism you're getting, you get the three basic tiers, right? The royalty on the top. And I guess maybe It's hard to say. It's hard to say that nobility really doesn't get a shot at the king's throne, temporary king's throne, ever. Maybe you like to think that in the USA, maybe upper middle class could get there, but unlikely. Right? There's after 10,000 to 12,000 years of just a killing and a destroying. You've finally gotten around. Your culture has finally gotten around. You have so many pharaohs now. So many people at the top of your pyramids that there's not room for nobility. You like to think that there is, but I mean, it's a long climb. I mean, you had one president recently who grew up legit poor, but now, living royal status, that kind of lifestyle, and was there. You're among the royals if you get to the Washington, D.C. place of American corruption. It's something else, called something else, some other group. But PMs, ministers of parliament, MPs, right? Or something. But you still got these classes. You still got this royal class. And in the USA, you got these temporary kings, and then you got a bunch of laws to make it so that blatant, overt tyranny is unlikely from your temporary king. And then now you had some Supreme Court tell you that, well, no, they can be, a little more direct with the tyrannical kind of behavior that civilized people expect, that civilized people cultivate, actually, right? Y'all cultivate tyrants. That's what you do. Every single government, civilized culture, is what we're talking about. 8 billion of you. Every government is just a pyramid scheme of pyramid schemes. There's no significant difference. You got the same filth in your rivers and lakes. In this country as you do over in that country. Same filth all around your homes. You're all suffering from the same, from the same contamination, from the same destruction. And y'all have kings. Y'all have royalty. And in the USA, you got these laws so you don't have such a I don't know what words am I looking for? I guess such a tyrannical king. Really, it's just everyone's supposed to take turns, right? Every 4 years or every 8 years or something. And then you go into king retirement or queen. It's mostly the mostly king if we're talking rulers around the world. Because, at its core, civilized culture is a misogynistic venture. Your culture is all about subjugation of Earth. And subjugation of women is, that's a necessary mechanism for this insane idea of your culture that you can conquer a planet, that you can be stewards of a planet. Really, that's ridiculous. Oh, so humble, right? You're so humble to say you're stewards. You don't take care of your mother. Mother takes care of you. Parents take care of the baby, of the offspring. It's not the other way around. Stewardship, that's ridiculous. That's just as egotistical, just as arrogant. And besides, it doesn't say stewardship in your culture's most famous story. It says have dominion. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. All right, so we're talking about right now kings, right? And we're going to get into this with even deeper with the next Supreme Court decision we look at here, because they're related. I'm referring to Alabama Supreme Court, that IVF decision, and this thing about kings here. Right. Well, Doomsy's got to tell you that the only reason that you have royalty among you, the only reason that you went from one pharaoh or a few pharaohs or a handful of kings, handful of tyrants, to many exponentially more tyrants, to 1 million pharaohs, or I guess call them neo-pharaohs today. They aren't so overtly worshipped, I guess in some cases, right? Cheeto Jesus now. So that's legit neo-pharaoh stuff. But there's 1 million of you. 1 million of yeah. I'm not talking to neo-pharaohs ain't listening. I don't know if anybody is. I should say y'all have 1 million neo-pharaohs, whatever the top 1 million wealthiest people are. That's how much consuming y'all are doing. That you can have 1 million pharaohs now, people just living like kings. And you have these rules to limit the tyranny, the possible tyranny, temporary kings. But, Supreme Court's ruling, let's look at this headline again. Supreme Court's ruling in Trump immunity case makes a president king above the law. Well, you already got a bunch of people above the law, right? Don't you have a bunch of laws that the penalty is a fine? Right? There's lots of laws where if you break the law, you got to pay money. And maybe if you don't, you go to jail. But if you got money, it's the money or I don't know, money or you're forever in debt, I guess. You either pay it. A bunch of laws like that, right? Well, those are not laws for the royal class. There's millions of people who those aren't really laws to them. Those fines don't mean anything. They just pay them. So you have you already have a bunch of royals in every society, every civilized society. You got a bunch of royals above the law. And if you listen to Doomsy before, you know I'm not advocating for law. If anything, this just tells you, what law enforcement, what are you doing? What's the law going to do? It's ridiculous. People break laws. There's no penalty for a lot of laws that are broken by rich people. But king above the law, it's what you got. You've always had that. But now it's just more overt. And the only reason you have kings, royalty among you, is because you think that it's in your DNA. Yeah, that's the only reason. It really is the only reason. It's happening right now. Right? That more and more people are realizing that you don't need kings and queens to be human. And you know what? The only way, like the first most effective way, if you want to be sure that you don't do a whole bunch of extra suffering under a tyrannical king, just don't have any kings. Right? That's the number one prerequisite for suffering under a tyrannical king, is to first have kings. But that's what you civilized folk do. You think that's the only that's the one right way to live. All right, now let's get to we're talking about the Supreme Courts, how they lay bare the tenets of your culture. So we're talking civilized culture. So it should be no surprise that you have a Supreme Court saying, the president has immunity. It's just what y'all do. You have kings, invariably, no matter what. And you had them before the Supreme Court decision. Just playing this, I guess the temporary king, the musical chairs with the elite, uber wealthy, super rich, taking turns. It just helped you feed that foolish utopian fantasy, which really is, foolish. It's a foolish fantasy. Most of your fiction, most of your entertainment is dystopian, not utopian. So that's why Doomsy can say, people are going to be abandoning civilized culture in droves. People are already doing it. Not a great number, but long before, well, maybe not long before, but many people before, millions before Doomsy had this kind of perspective on things. Well, many millions more will. Because what's in it for Gen Alpha's grandkids? Okay. From the Supreme Court's decision making presidents kings, Okay, that lays bare the tenets of your culture, because civilized culture, for 10,000, 12,000 years, you live among kings. 300,000 years of basically no royalty anywhere. 300,000 years of human existence on Earth. Modern humans. We're talking Homo sapiens, AMH, anatomically modern humans. 300,000 years of fashion, art, dinner parties, fighting, yeah, but no wars so huge you have to name them after the whole planet. People are able to live 300,000 years without old folks' homes and schools. 300,000 years. And then you get civilized culture popping into the scene, declaring itself the one right way to live. And everywhere it spreads via genocide and slavery under kings or queens, under royalty. And that's what you've had everywhere civilized people go, you have these kings. So that's just something y'all believe. That's why you have them. That's why you can get on Twitter or X or whatever the F it is now and go, what's this Elon Musk guy? What a bozo. What's that guy all about? You know what? Why is he part of your lives? And you can tell his perspectives are always from a throne. Does he ever talk about him living in Mars? Well, he's talking about other people. Because Mars is a desolate rock. And it doesn't have enough gravity anyways. It's just stupid. But you have these people. They're royalty, yeah. They're up on the hierarchy, but the good news, the Doomsy give you some good news right now, okay? They're not leaders. Those people are not leaders. The Musks, the Bezoses, the Gateses, the Trumps. Hard to say that. I mean, it's such a fraud, but really, still hundreds of millions at least. Maybe billions. Who knows? It's just ridiculous. That's just your country, but there's a million neo-pharaohs in your culture. So, and that's because you think that defines your species. That's one of the defining characteristics of your species. When really it's just a telltale sign of civilized people. It's characteristic of your culture. About 8 billion of you live with kings that are either tyrannical kings or you're worried about them becoming tyrannical kings. 8 billion of you. And the reason you have all these kings, tyrants or otherwise, is because you think it's in your DNA. It's what defines you as a species. That's why, ultimately. There's another reason, and we're going to get to that right now. Okay, there's another reason, and we're looking now at the Alabama Supreme Court decision on IVF. So this is from PBS.org. Headline is Bible quoting Alabama Chief Justice sparks church-state debate in embryo ruling. This is related headlines on the side here. Kind of sums it up. Alabama Supreme Court rules frozen embryos can be considered children under state law. Let's look at another headline here. Same court decision. Alabama's IVF ruling is Christian theology masquerading as law. That's another headline, right? This is from The Nation, nation.com. Alabama's IVF ruling is Christian theology masquerading as law. The ruling is clearly unconstitutional, but don't expect the Supreme Court to come to the rescue. That's what they're saying. Alabama, this is The Nation. And look, Christian theology, okay, yeah, maybe, but it goes farther back than that. Because let's examine. Do you really disagree with this ruling? Do you? There's another. This is from KSBY. Well, it's a local news channel 6. Some channel 6 somewhere. Alabama court cites Bible while ruling embryos are children. Another headline. And then here we have this headline. The most entertaining of them all. This is from the BBC. BBC.com. Headline reads, Alabama IVF ruling divides devout Christians. Quote, fewer children will be born. So it divides. So there is a conflict there, I guess, right? Because, you could say that this is Christian theology that's upset about this decision. And Christian theology that is for this decision. Why is court for it, or why would Christians be for it? Well, see, this is where it goes beyond Christian theology. Let's come down here. And there's a reason why what the Supreme Court in Alabama decided was the most civilized decision they could make. This is just what your culture is about. It's about a couple things here in conflict, but there's, I guess, a priority. There's some, I guess, more to the core tenets to your culture. Let's see, is it in here? They're quoting the Bible. Maybe it was the other article. Or they're citing. Yeah, okay, here we go. Okay, this is from the BBC article. Delving into religious sources from classical Christian theologians like St. Thomas Aquinas and also a modern conservative Christian manifesto, he concluded that even before birth, I guess they're talking Chief Justice Tom Parker, the Alabama Supreme Court. He concluded that even before birth, all human beings have the image of God, and their lives cannot be destroyed without effacing His glory. always have the image of God. So that's what we're talking about here. And it's in conflict. So that's why you have the headline, the same article saying Alabama IVF really divides devout Christians, because that's part of civilized culture too. That's not Christian theology. Be fruitful and multiply. Multiplying fruitfully. Multiplying. It ain't so fruitful the way it's going for y'all. But definitely the multiplying is happening. You gone from 2 billion a century ago, 4 billion a half century ago. Now you're 8 billion. 8 billion of you holy war agriculturalists. 8 billion of you. So yeah, it's all about multiplying. So they're in conflict, right? They got their magically perfect book, or one version of it, right? There is no Bible like the Bible. There's multiple Bibles. You should always ask which Bible people are talking about or quoting from. It goes like, you got that in there, right? The order, the instruction to multiply. Well, this slows down the multiplication now, doesn't it? Fewer children will be born. Oh no. Fewer? The population's still increasing. Even now, the population of your culture still increasing. So it's just not accelerating, I guess. It's not accelerating as fast. The increase isn't happening as quickly as it could. It's still multiplying. So that's causing problems amongst devout Christians, because for them it's in the top of their mind, but it's in the back of everybody's mind. It's in the back of 8 billion of you. That's how you became 8 billion. That's how your stampede went from 2 billion to 4 billion to 8 billion, because it's in the back of y'all's minds, multiplying. Okay, so this comes into conflict with the probably the most powerful tenet of your culture, of civilized culture, what you people believe. Alabama Supreme Court, they hit it. They hit nail on the head. Image of a God. Y'all are in the image of a God. Y'all think you're gods. Civilized culture compels you to believe that. In every phase. Every society. Right? Look at, we're talking America here, so let's go with a song taught to a bunch of Gen Xers. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Islands. This land was made for you and me, right? You know, there's a bunch more verses to that. But it's not about sharing. It's not about being a good neighbor. It's about ownership. Ownership of the land. And it's not land for bears or wolves or trout or eagles. It's not land for turtles or squirrels or bison, is it? it's your land. It's yours. That's what you're told to believe by your culture. And it's yours because you're in the image of gods. You look like gods. Now, if you don't agree with this IVF ruling from the Alabama Supreme Court, if you think they're wrong, that these little embryos in a tube or whatever, I don't know, they're in a jar or some kind of container, right? They fell on the floor. So inside there, that biomatter supposedly resembles gods. If you don't agree with that decision, then what are you doing? What are you doing with your lifestyle? Because you're certainly acting like gods. You act like the whole friggin' planet is yours to do with as you please. Cigarette butts everywhere. Concrete everywhere. Plastic everywhere. Plastic everywhere. Because you think it's yours. And the reason you think it's yours is because you think you're gods. You think you're above all the other creatures, all the other earthlings. You think you're superior. Everything's a resource. Make the oceans just so polluted. And I'm talking noise pollution. Let's talk pollution. All the nuclear weapons you set off in the oceans, all the garbage you put there. If your culture continues, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. It's not a question of if, only a question of when, and it'll happen sometime this century. If you push, if y'all push the stampede, if so far, if the numbers don't get to a point where the abandonment is happening in droves, and you still could, it's possible, I guess you could survive with more plastic than fish in the ocean, but why is that happening? Because you think you're gods. So if you disagree with the Alabama Supreme Court's IVF decision, then how about some intellectual honesty here? You should question everything about your lifestyle, about civilized culture, everything you've been told about humans and their place in the universe. You better question that. You say Alabama Supreme Court is wrong. Those aren't little God copies, God Xeroxes, God images in those tubes or jars or whatever. Image of gods. Of course, reality is humans create gods in whatever image they want. Your culture creates gods in the image of human beings, invariably. And over time, it took a while, but over time, y'all have managed, in your most popular religions, y'all have managed to make it like exclusively penis oriented. No goddesses, only gods. Christianity, what? The most popular of the plagiarized Abrahamic religions. You have three gods. 3 gods, 6 testicles, 0 ovaries. So the gods are in the image of Yah. You make God in your image, and you think you have the God's image, and so you think you have godlike knowledge, and you think you have what? Ownership. Was God's own things? Is that a property of godliness? Owning planets? But y'all act like you own the planet. So if you disagree with Alabama Supreme Court, you should not be handing off civilized culture to the next generation. Because Alabama Supreme Court, they're just deciding based on what's civilized. Because that is civilized thought. That's one of the fundamental core beliefs from civilized mythology. That's why there's plastic everywhere. And these court decisions are connected very strongly. And here's why. The first case we were talking about was what? You have president's a king. Okay, really, the president's more of a king. That's all. And the president now is more likely to become tyrannical king. So what else is new? 10,000 years of that. 12,000 years of that. That's... Yeah, so we're talking about kings, why you have kings. I mentioned before that you have kings because you think it's in your DNA. Well, this is connected. One reason, another reason, I guess, what is it? Ancillary reason? Well, another reason you have kings is because you do believe that you are like, you're imaged as gods and then ordered by gods to live life as punished planet conquerors. So that's another important reason why you keep the gods around you. So the first belief, the first mythological belief in your 10,000-year-old culture is why you got kings in the first place, why you have royalty, why there's pharaohs. The reason why you have neo-pharaohs, the reason why you have royalty 10,000 years later, why your culture is still just warmongering away 10,000 years later, is because civilized lifestyles suck. Pyramid building sucks. It's always sucked. And it's what most people do. Y'all replaced 300,000 years of egalitarian tribal lifestyles, diversity everywhere. 300,000 years of that. Civilized culture comes along and practically overnight, nope, no more tribes. Socioeconomic hierarchies. and peasants at the bottom, the masses, commoners at the bottom. So in that lifestyle, that sucks. You don't thrive, you barely survive. And when you're struggling to get by, and you're dragging stones, and you're building pyramids for these neo-pharaohs, it's pretty damn hard to think of yourself as the god that civilized culture tells you that you are. Planet conquering, that's bloody business. War versus Earth, war versus anybody else. But war versus Earth, that takes a toll. That's a lot of stress, a lot of struggle, a lot of suffering. A whole lot of suffering. And makes it difficult to feel like the god that your culture tells you you must be in order for you to justify all the warmongering, all the plastic everywhere. And so, to maintain that myth, to maintain your culture's mythology of godhood, you have kings, you have royalty, you have someone with the same number of arms and legs, someone your species, no tail, monkeys without tails. You can point to them and look, they're living like gods, right? They're not suffering. So that's proof that I'm of the godlike species, right? That's what civilized culture was getting me to think my whole life. So you have these kings as royalty because you need pharaohs. You have neo-pharaohs because if you don't, then the jig is up, right? I mean, you can't look at anybody and say, living like a king, basically living like a king, living like a god. If you don't have that to point to, then everything you're doing, why are you doing it? Building pyramids, dragging stones, waging war, that's tough. There's no motivation. And now, you got these isms now, you got these different ways to describe your pyramid building. But a lot of you think that you have an opportunity to climb the socio-economic hierarchy, to gain some altitude, sit atop a big pyramid, build a pyramid yourself. Get others to build it. You too can be a neo-pharaoh. So that's where that fantasy comes from. Free market, freedom, capitalism, communism. It doesn't matter. It's all basically the same. Right? I mean, what do you civilized people do? What do you all do? You all have kings, and some of them just become just overt, blatant, nasty tyrants. But you put them there. You have tyrannical kings because you have kings. If you don't want any more tyrannical kings, stop having kings. You really don't have to. You don't have to have them. You think it's part of your species. You think it's in your DNA. You think that's like evolution. That's how you finally became human, right? Was when you had some pyramids going, you had some pharaohs. But no, that's not the case. Communism, capitalism, doesn't matter. What y'all do is you systematically filter through your population to filter for the greediest, the most power hungry, the most ruthless people among you. You encourage those qualities in people, you filter for the best of them, and then you reward the greedy, the power hungry, the ruthless. You reward them by just elevating them on your socioeconomic hierarchy. You make the kings, and then suffer under the most tyrannical ones. We'll suffer under all of them, but really suffer under the most tyrannical kings. That's all you're doing. That's why the most powerful thing in the human experience is mythology, because that's what's driving y'all right now. That's what's driving the stampede. So, kings and IVF. It doesn't much matter. Don't worry so much about this Supreme Court stuff. This is just your culture at work. This is what civilized culture does. You have kings and queens to one degree of tyranny or another, and it varies, and they're all temporary, right? Eventually some of them have to die in office, you know, like Putin. He's a product of civilized culture. All the governments are. All y'all's governments are. And one final thing before Doomsy goes here, before I gotta sign off, is the law. I know we talked a little bit about the law at the beginning of the episode, how it doesn't, how it like, ooh, president, you have someone above the law. You always have people above the law, especially for the laws that, what the penalty is a fine. So we mentioned that. But here's another thing about laws. And I guess before I talk about this, I'm reminded of Buford T. Justice in Smokey and the Bandit. Because you got to get ready. I'll quote him here to help you get ready for what Doomsy's about to say. This is Buford T. Justice. After like crashing on the side of the road because the truck wouldn't let him pass or something. So it would be the Bandit or Smokey. Which was Smokey and the Bandit? Which one was in the truck? I think the Bandit was in the Trans Am. Well, anyways, let's quote Buford T. Justice here. What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law. And we really are, or you really are. You're about to deal with let's say a total lack of respect for the law. And you know why Doomsy has total lack of respect for the law? Because it's a farce. There's never been a law written that has eliminated the behavior that it was meant to deter. They've all been failures. Every law. And if people break them and they get caught, it's not really a law if the penalty is a fine and they are rich. But if the penalty is not a fine, then what? The only thing you can do is to put people in cages. Toss people in cages. You toss people in cages. Just at the drop of a dime. Or drop of a hat. How does that work? Can you drop a coin and an article of clothing in the same way? But that's how quick you're tossing people in cages. I mean, you don't hesitate. But you could have more cages to lock people up in. Your law is still a failure. And we're going to look at one of them here, right now. Just to show you how, you can't expect Doomsy to worry like some people are. Like, oh, the Constitution. The Constitution. The president. We have a king now. The president's above the law. Oh, let's do something about the law, right? Make stronger laws. Get more judges. Let's pack the bench. Look. Before we look at this one particular law, I want to show you, and it's not an immunity. It's not a constitution thing. It's something else. Okay, before we take a look at that. It's ridiculous for you to think that laws are going to be your savior. You got this thing, what? Constitution, whoop-de frickin' do, la-di frickin' da. How has your culture spread across the globe? Historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, they agree, they know. They know the two main methods by which civilized culture has spread from the Fertile Crescent to the four corners of the world. Those two main methods are 1, genocide, 2, slavery. That's your modus operandi there. You civilized folks, that's your MO. It's your SOP. That's how you spread. That's a standard operating procedure for civilized cultures spread. It was genocide and slavery. 10,000 years of that. 10 to 12,000. I think you'd say 12,000 and maybe 10,000 years ago is when you really started to have royalty. It took a while to get the surplus up. Food surpluses. Always got to produce food surpluses, right? That's a characteristic of civilized culture. But look, 10, 12,000 years of genocide and slavery. 10 to 12,000 years of warmongering. And for, 5,000 years, that at least several thousand years. How far back does writing go? You've been writing laws for several thousand years. For several thousand years. You've been writing laws. And just recently, civilized people, civilized folks, got to some quote-unquote new world, new continents, without farmers, without holy war agriculturalists, and got there, not even how many centuries ago, just a few centuries ago. And what was it that ensued? Genocide and slavery. Well documented genocide and slavery. That's what you civilized people do. You've been doing it for 10,000 years. You've been writing laws for half that time, 5,000 years. And what you think, you Americans, you civilized people in the US of A, you think that, now you got this thing called the Constitution. That's gonna fix things. It's a joke. Even bigger joke. Look at this. Or listen to this. This is a podcast. Doomsy can't ask you to look at this. Doomsy's gonna read it to you. Okay, here we go. This is a complete lack of respect for the law right here. And here's why. Here's why Doomsy has no respect for the law. 50 years, this is, from GAO.gov, the U.S. Government Accountability Office. It's a .gov site. This is from a couple years ago. And here's the headline. 50 years after the Clean Water Act, gauging progress. 50 years after the Clean Water Act. So 50 years ago, there was this law that it was just so big. I mean, it wasn't something that was slipped into some omnibus bill or some earmark kind of program thing that was added on to some other budget, or this was just one huge piece of law. One huge piece of law. The Clean Water Act. So this article, so we'll read you part of it. This is a couple years ago. Tomorrow marks the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, which was passed by Congress on October 18, 1972, establishing a nationwide approach to improving the quality of our nation's lakes, rivers, streams, and other water bodies. Okay. Here's the Environmental Integrity Project. I'm sorry, let's go back. They say, they mention a report in here. The act requires the EPA, along with states, tribes, and territories, to monitor the quality of U.S. lakes, rivers, streams, estuaries, and other water bodies. They're required to list water bodies that are impaired by pollutants and to plan for cleaning them up. Now, this did have a big effect on a few big rivers that went through, that cut right through the middle of a big city, through the downtown of a big city. This Clean Water Act, I think it resulted in some of those waterways actually getting cleaner. But here's the Clean Water Act at 50, environmentalintegrityproject.org, or the web address is environmentalintegrity.org. They don't have the project in the domain name. A half century after the passage of the landmark Federal Clean Water Act, and almost 4 decades after the law's deadline for all waters across the U.S. to be fishable and swimmable, 50% of assessed river and stream miles, 703,417 miles nationally, are so polluted they are classified as impaired, quote unquote, impaired, according to a new report by the Environmental Integrity Project. The report, the Clean Water Act at 50, promises half kept at the half-century mark, uses state data to also show that 55% of lake acres that have been studied in recent years and 25% of assessed bays and estuaries are impaired, meaning they cannot be used safely for one or more public uses, such as swimming, fishing, or as sources of drinking water. So don't drink the water, but then don't eat the fish you get out of there. And also don't even swim. Don't let that water touch your skin. So what, 50 to 55%. And here's the official report. This is the PDF. And here they got a big graphic here with a couple seagulls standing on some posts, like pier posts. These wooden stumps, or they look like tree stumps. Clean Water Act falling short. So one seagull standing on the graph part that says 1,426,619 miles of rivers and streams have been assessed. And the other one, 725,856 miles are impaired with pollution. So we're talking most. 51% is most. 50% plus 1 is most, but you got 51% after 50 years of the Clean Water Act. Thank you, Clean Water Act. Thank you, laws. Isn't that what you want to say? The Clean Water Act. It's not like they forgot to slip it in some bill, or they dropped some pages. I mean, the whole thing was called the Clean Water Act. And now what do you got? You passed the Clean Water Act. 50 years later, most lakes and rivers are impaired, are toxic, are poison. We won't even talk about forever chemicals and the plastic everywhere. That's just from stuff you're always doing that's just perfectly legal, of course. No law against that. But we're talking here, the Clean Water Act. The laws to ensure that your waters, right? It's your lakes, your rivers. That's why they use possessive pronouns, right? Because y'all are gods and it's your planet, right? It was given to you to conquer. That's what civilized culture has you believe in. That it's your waters that are most. 51%. So why have any respect for laws? Why think that some special collection of laws, you call it a constitution, you think that's going to save you? No. It's not going to help. There's no amount of technology, no amount of legislation, no amount of taxation that's going to solve these problems. It's going to slow the stampede. So I hope I've helped you see how Supreme Courts have laid bare the tenets of civilized culture, the core beliefs of your culture. You live among kings only because you think it's in your DNA. And you keep these kings. You originally got kings because civilized people thought you have to have them. But really they're there because pyramid building and warmongering sucks. It's a pretty lame lifestyle. 300,000 years without it. All humans. And now, civilized cultures everywhere. And you're building pyramids. And it's hard to feel like a god. Hard to feel like the god that your culture tells you that you are. Or that you at least are imaged as. You're imaged as a god. Pretty hard to feel that your image and a god's image are the same, right? If you're building pyramids, if you're dragging the stones. Tough to keep that myth going. But not if you have a king. If you can point to a creature that's of your species and say, look at those people, they don't have a care in the world. Their life, look at the decisions they make. No stress. They have all this power. They live like gods. Same species as me. They live like that. There's not a single gorilla or crocodile or gazelle that live like our neo-pharaohs. So yeah, Elon Musk is an idiotic buffoon god. But hey, you know, same species as you. So you can feel a little bit better, right, about living the way you do, about treating the planet as if it's yours to do with as you please. Because you got kings, you live like gods, y'all are like gods. And kings invariably have some degree of tyranny to them. Even the good ones. What was it? Kings, queens. Yeah, that one queen died recently. One of y'all's queens. One of your queens died. Everyone was, oh, queen died, how sad. Okay, if you want to think that. Doomsy don't feel either way about it. But I do know that there are a lot of people, thousands upon thousands, maybe millions, probably millions of people who glad that bee was dead. Called her a tyrant. Thought of her that way. Some degree of tyranny to somebody. good news is they're not leaders. And we'll talk about that next time. We'll talk about that next time. But president who's king, you don't need him. You really don't. It's a myth. And really, look, you got to go. People are moving beyond it. Don't expect Gen Alpha's grandkids to be into the Pharaoh fostering, Neo-Pharaoh fostering. There's no reason for them to be into that. There's only one way. There's only one way that you can have tyrannical kings in your society. And that way is to first have kings. It's the only way you get tyrannical kings. Only way you can get a tyrant. Only way you get a tyrant is to first have kings. That's y'all. Laws aren't going to save you. And that's good news. Because you know there's no amount of law writing can fix what is so broken. And you can see it. There's no fixing it. That's good news. Leave it behind. People are going to leave it behind. They're leaving it behind. They're looking to leave it behind because there's no fixing it. All right, Doomsy, will see you next time.